So we've certainly seen the impacts that zebra mussels have had on native mussels in this area, and it's well known that it's had a huge impact elsewhere in the Great Lakes region. This is not the only thing that's affecting native mussel diversity and abundance, however. So maybe you can tell us a few more things that are known to have impacts on this mussel population.
Yeah, native mussels are among the more sensitive freshwater organisms out there. They have a variety of impacts that can do a lot of damage to the populations that can ultimately lead to extirpation and even extinction of species. Some of the big deals that we're seeing in this part of the world, in the Great Lakes region, is that we're having massive agricultural practices. Row cropping agriculture seems to be having a long-term chronic effects on native species. You don't tend to see this in a large body of water like Lake St. Clair, but in the rivers, the tributary streams of Lake St. Clair, like the Nam and the Thames River in southwestern Ontario, or the Clinton and the Bell Rivers in Michigan, they're largely agricultural watersheds, mostly corn and soybean that are being grown there. And in order to maintain a massive agricultural process like that, you have to add lots of herbicides, lots of pesticides, lots of fertilizers into your soils. And ultimately, those will trickle down into streams, into larger and larger order streams, and into areas where native mussels are found. And these can have detrimental effects. Ultimately, it might not happen overnight, but over years, decades, sometimes those native mussel populations will be under stress. They will decline and ultimately disappear from a lot of areas. The other thing that we've done is we've changed our freshwater ecosystems, especially streams and rivers, as we put dams in place. And the native mussels are very sensitive to damming. You change a river into what was a free-flowing stream into basically what becomes a lake when you put a large dam in place, and that changes it. And a lot of mussels are adapted for living in free-flowing waters, especially some of the more sensitive species. The other thing that's going on is that you've changed it from a river to a lake, and you've changed the fish species. And all of these native freshwater mussels require a host fish in order to complete their life cycle. Some of them are very specific in the type of host they use. Some are more generalist. Some of the more host-specific species are extremely dependent on that host. And if that host isn't there anymore, because of pollution, because of agricultural pollution, because of industrial pollution, because of a dam acting as a barrier for its movement, then those populations are going to disappear eventually as well. I'm concerned about this river. There's a lot of undercutting of banks. It's deeply incising this the bottom of the river, and we're getting down to kind of a clay layer. And there's a lot of clay and sand and silts that are being washed downstream, and it's covering up the gravel, or washing out the gravel itself as well in places. So it's reducing the amount of available habitat for the mussels. And this kind of happens when you build tile drains everywhere and you have increased flashiness of the system, and you start having this deeply incised river channel. It's very straight here too. I don't think this was channelized, but you never know. Someone years ago may have taken a bulldozer through here.
So it's pretty obvious from just observations that the zebra mussels have a pretty significant impact on the native mussels, largely through attaching to them, competing with them. What about other species in this kind of ecosystem? Are they affected in some way by the presence of this many zebra mussels, for good or bad?
Well, some bad things that have been happening, and you hear a lot about them, is that there's zebra mussels grow in such high densities, especially in parts of Lake Erie. They can reach densities of tens of thousands per square meter, and what's happening is they settle on the bottom. They have these huge densities. Of course, they go through normal life cycle as well, and they'll die off as well. Because there's so much biomass in the bottom of the lake at that point. When they die in large numbers, usually at the end of the season, the amount of oxygen that is required to remove those tissues basically bacterial break those down, they remove a lot of the oxygen from the bottom of the lake, and you can have fish kills because of that. The other thing is some of the bacteria that are responsible for breaking the dead zebra mussels down are the same bacteria that cause botulism, which is a foodborne pathogen that we hear a lot about in humans. But there are different strains of this type of bacterium, and some of them have very negative effects on birds. And birds will feed on the fish that have been feeding on the dead zebra mussels. The zebra mussel toxins will, these botulism toxins will then go up through the food chain, magnify as the fish-eating birds eat them, and you'll have large die-offs of various different waterfowl. Specifically, there have been large die-offs of loons, mergansers, a lot of the fish-eating waterfowl that are present in the lakes.
Are they bioaccumulating any other toxins, heavy metals, or any other pollutants, or is it mainly the bacterial toxins that are happening?
There are certainly other toxins that have been present in the lake for a long time, and they're certainly capable of accumulating them. A lot of the toxins that used to be more active in the water column have now been shifted down to the benthic and down to the bottoms of the lake. So there's that as well. One of the good things, though, is that a lot of those toxins aren't in the water column anymore. The zebra mussels are such efficient filter feeders, and they're in such massive numbers, they're capable of putting them down at the bottom of the lake, and they kind of stay there then, too. They're kind of, they're of course capable of clearing the water column significantly in western Lake Erie, which is known for its turbid waters and not especially nice looking. A lot of people say that the water is clearer than it's been in any recent memory, perhaps ever. And again, that's a lot because there's a lot of the algae and whatnot are less present. There's more plants, rooted plants, able to grow deeper into the lake, and you have a shift from kind of the pelagic system, where everything's in the water column, to a more benthic system, where more of the biomass is in the bottom.
So I guess one of the important things to bear in mind is that the materials, whether it's particulate matter, dissolved carbon, other pollutants, they're not moving out of the lake. They're being redistributed by the zebra mussels to the bottom of the lake, which is a different thing. So they're not removing anything, they're just moving it to a different part of the water column, which is important to keep in mind, I think.
I'm fairly certain I'm not missing them. I'm just not finding them. Every scoop. Oh, the filling the waders.
Well, this has
oh, the bottom's different.
a caddisfly.
Yep. Yeah, they are kind of ecosystem engineers.
Two, actually. So there are two caddisfly.
They're just not on the edges.
Larvae.
Yeah, they
Are,
provide habitat for a lot of organisms.
exactly. So these are insects that, in the larval form, they live in the water, and they form these cases. They're quite famous for forming these cases out of rock and other materials that are around. People have actually even used them to make jewelry by giving them precious stones or gold flakes or things to use to make their cases. And in this case, there's two of them stuck to this mussel. So, in fact, they're not just providing habitat for zebra mussels in the lakes, but they obviously are generating substrate here for all kinds of other things, insects in this case.